22 minutes past 6. We're going to Iraq now. The Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, has stepped down, paving the way for a new coalition that is hoped can end the Islamic State insurgency.
It follows a government announcement that Britain is prepared to arm Kurdish forces should the leadership request it. Our correspondent Richard Gaisford has been to meet with Kurds on the front line and sent this report.
Fighting back against the Sunni militants that threaten Iraqi Kurdistan and its capital, Erbil. The Kurds' own Peshmerga force may lack up-to-date equipment, but make up for it with enthusiasm.
Well, all afternoon we've heard fast jets up in the sky. We think they must be American. There have been explosions on the hilltops over here, but these Kurdish forces, the Peshmerga, have been giving supporting fire using these guns onto the hills.
Islamic State fighters are within sight, this major tells me, less than a mile in some places.
Well, the Peshmerga is keen to point out that it doesn't want anyone else to come here to do the fighting. It has the ability, it says, to do that, but what it doesn't have is the hardware, and it reckons that with more military equipment it will be able to not only keep up the pressure on the Islamic State fighters, but also push them out of the region altogether.
For now, ancient mortar tubes are fired from what until recently was a humanitarian shelter.
Well, I was here in June when this camp first opened and watched it rapidly fill up. Now you can see it's absolutely desolate and empty. Not because the refugees have gone home, quite the opposite. In fact, the Sunni extremists chased them up the road here from Mosul. That black line in the road is the front line in this war. The whole camp became far too dangerous.
The Kurds are determined to destroy the threat, although they're looking for help to secure a victory. Richard Gaisford, Good Morning Britain in northern Iraq.
And the Middle East analyst Nabila Ramdani is here with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
On this issue then of the decision to arm the Kurdish forces, so Britain has now said it's prepared to, along with other nations. Is this seen as the right way forward?
Well, I think despite, of all attempts by President Barack Obama to sound desperately upbeat about the situation, there's no doubt that the situation on the ground and the security situation in particular is particularly horrifying. And the West is proving itself quite incapable of dealing with the situation. It played a massive role in creating, remember, ISIS, didn't exist before the US-led invasion of 2003. But there's absolutely no doubt that there's a consensus internationally that something needs to be done to crush ISIS and get rid of it. There's a huge moral imperative, and that's why we're seeing the Americans carrying on with their airstrikes, which have proved quite successful so far, and other countries, including Britain and France, now, convinced that they should be arming the rebels. In my view, this kind of knee-jerk reaction of arming rebel fighters is not going to be the solution to sort this mess out. It's a bit like, the same kind of short-term logic that we had at the end of the Iraq War, when people were convinced that the fall of Saddam Hussein was going to sort all of Iraq's troubles. It didn't. I think politically there are other moves that the international community is considering.
But like what could they do, though? Would that involve more airstrikes, boots on the ground to help the situation?
I think the chances of having Western boots on the ground are extremely slim. Remember, the Iraq War was extremely unpopular in the UK and indeed in the US, and President Obama was seen as the president who was going to end that kind of interference in troubled countries like Iraq. So the chances of having boots on the ground are very slim. But today, for example, there is a UN Security Council meeting where the 5 permanent members of the UN Council will vote on a UK drafted resolution to condemn forcefully ISIS and its crimes, but also to take measures to condemn trade with ISIS. Remember, they control oil fields, they're very rich indeed. So the idea is to criminalize countries that trade with ISIS and their supporters, but also to control the flow of foreign fighters who are joining ISIS and bring them to justice.
Nabila, what about the change in power then, the new Prime Minister? What sort of impact might that have?
Well, that is the resignation of former Prime Minister now, Nouri al-Maliki, is very significant indeed. Remember, he did so much to contribute to this situation. His Shia-led government, hugely corrupt, fostered the kind of divisions and hatred we're seeing between different groups, the Shia, the Kurds, the Sunni. And frankly, he had become a liability within Iraq, but also for the international community. And he came under much pressure to resign and to give way for the new Prime Minister, Haider al-Abadi. Now, this new prime minister, although he has the backing of the Shia clerical establishment, Iran, America, but also the international community as large, facing huge challenges ahead, not least of all to form a reconciliation government of unity and corruption, and indeed, more crucially, train his army to fight ISIS. And he's already made it abundantly clear that Western help would be more than welcome.
Nabila Ramdani, thanks for your analysis this morning.